woke up this morning to a piece with a senator in Arkansas in a meeting where one of the other senators, they were voting on some kind of gun law or something. And one of the other senators tried to shut her down, and she went off. She went completely off the rails. She let him have it, and she was screaming at him, and he was like, "You're out of order." And she's like, "I don't care. I don't care that I'm like," she went there. And I was like, I watched that and I said, Black people are tired. Black people are tired. We are tired of being mistreated, disrespected, disenfranchised, disavowed for no apparently good reason other than the fact that we look different from our peers and constituents that are not us. So how are you feeling in the middle of all this? Because I know for me personally, I'm frustrated too. And I want to be on the front lines and I want to protest and be like, power to the people. But like you said previously, we're in the middle of a pandemic in addition to everything else. My mother lives with me. She's 81 years old. I can't put myself at risk like that because I'll put her at risk. So, how are you feeling about all of this? Because I'm not a Black man. I'm just Black and a woman. But you're a Black man in America going through this. What are you feeling about all of that right now?
All in this together, no matter what. And the thing about it is that you're fighting. I just want to put this, make a point about this. You're fighting in a different way. And so are a lot of us. We're fighting in a different way. We don't necessarily have to be on the front lines. The young people are out there. They're healthy. They're energetic. They're passionate. And that's one thing. People have been asking recently about, is this a repeat, of what we've been talking about? No, it's not a repeat. It's been happening. Like, there's ebbs and flows. But, it happened with Rodney King. It happened with the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s. It's been ebbs and flows, but it's always stayed in the world in some capacity. But right now it's just hit a critical point. And I actually feel hopeful. I know that sounds really interesting, but I feel hopeful because we were all on one level at one time, at this time with coronavirus, with the economy and being scared of that. And what's gonna happen to us. But then you saw repeatedly Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and then George Floyd within a 3-week period, if not less. And you couldn't get away from it because you're at home and you're watching it. And it's in your face. Now, this has been happening for a long time, and people have been screaming and yelling about it. But for some reason, it was always over there. And then Kaepernick took a knee to protest it, just in the way that he constitutionally, his right to protest. But you said that was wrong, and you're saying it's against the flag. But then, we get more passionate and do riots and stuff, and not everybody was doing the rioting, and there was a lot of other folks, other factions doing rioting. But, what is it that you will accept? But I think now it really opened up the hearts and the minds of people that were not aware of it or did not care about it. It was apathy for it. Because again, it was over there. And the hope that I have is because I see people of all walks of life in this United States of America saying Black Lives Matter at the same time. Then you have people in England, you have people in Italy, you have people in Japan who are very pure race and love their pure race, but they're over there saying Black Lives Matter. So to parallel this with the film, people are looking at this film and saying, wow, this is definitely, I'm looking at this in a different way now than I would have looked at it had it just been the film by itself. And it's almost like the perfect storm because it hits all of this subject.
You're absolutely right. I watched it a couple of times, and that's saying something because it's 2 hours and some change. But I'm just calling a spade. But I love Spike Lee, and I have loved Spike Lee since I was a journalism student at Howard University. So I've been a Spike Lee head for quite some time. And
right.
And this particular film struck a chord with me because, my father fought in the Vietnam War and in the Cuban crisis. So I'm the daughter of somebody who experienced that. And like I expressed on some previous calls and previous interviews regarding this film, for me in particular, it resonated because most of the time when we see films about the Vietnam War, it's always from a white man's point of view, and the black men in the film are like these kind of supporting characters. We don't really get a sense of how they got there or what their struggle was. You know, the only exception to a small degree might be Forrest Gump, to a small degree, but right, like this. but this time it's from a black man's point of view, and I'm just interested to know, how much did you know about the black man's point of view in Vietnam before this, and how did shooting this film color your thoughts about it afterwards?
Listen, I had no idea. My cousin, that's the only person that I could think of right now that was, had any sort of affiliation with the Vietnam War. But my cousin was there, fought in the army, and actually married a Vietnamese woman, brought her back, and they have 3 children, 3 beautiful children that are my cousins. And so that was kind of my only tie into that. And I ended up doing a show on Broadway called MISS Saigon, where I used his experience and put it in that character. And it was significant because my character was fighting for these children that are put in orphanages because these GIs left a lot of children. So it was a lot of great tie-in for that. Anyway, in my research with Miss Saigon, it was on a macro level. So I really only did see footage of, some black men, but mostly white men in the army and the helicopter and all this kind of stuff. I had no idea until we did this film. And I started reading the script. I read the book that it's based on called Bloods, which I recommend. Go get Bloods. And it's short stories, and it tells stories about the black culture that was there. This was the first war that was ever fought that was not a segregated army. It wasn't like a white army and a black army like the previous wars. This was one army. They segregated themselves in Vietnam. But, and they ended up having, and you saw us doing like the DAP when we would see each other and stuff. That was significant because that's how a lot of units and platoons would recognize each other. So there's a different DAP for each different platoon. And DAP means dignity and pride.
Ooh, so, now that I didn't know.
That was brought back over, and a lot of people started doing those kinds of things. Like Flip Wilson would do, hey, those kinds, people would see it on a commercial level, but that started over in Vietnam. But yeah, it really resonated with us, finding out each day. And we saw footage that Spike gave us of documentaries about the black culture that was there. And I was like, how come we didn't know that? Like, it's not in our history books. It's not in any films. So this will definitely be a key to a door that opens up to more black history. Like, I hope that not only do they find out more about the Vietnam War, but they go back further and find out more about what was left out of our history in American history.
That's one of the things I love about Spike Lee's filmmaking. Everything that he does is some kind of nod to some historical moment within Black life here in America. It's always, and sometimes it's very subtle, and sometimes it's like smack dab in your face, like a big old pail of cold water. But he always, addresses what our experience is in life in America. And I love him for that. As a filmmaker. And I loved seeing you in this film, because you are somebody that went from being like, in the chorus of Tommy to Miss Saigon to being the Phantom to being Porgy, and and now you in the Spike Lee joint. So what did it sound like when you got that call telling you, so yeah, dude, you got the gig, you're gonna be in the latest Spike Lee joint?
It's funny because, I've known Spike for a while, and we've seen each other at different events. He's come to see some shows that I've been a part of. And then I ended up getting cast in She's Gotta Have It. I had a small role in the TV show She's Gotta Have It. So I had that experience with him. Then a few months later, I get a phone call from Spike. He's like, yo, what are you doing? I'm like, nothing. He's like, okay, I'm sending you a script. Read it. Click.
Shut up. He did not just hang up on you like that.
Click. Okay, when Spike Lee calls you, you do what he tells you to do. I had no idea that I was being considered, but I thought, okay, you know what? Spike is asking my opinion about a script that he was, one of the authors of. So I read the script. He called me the next day. And he said, "What do you think about it?" I said, "Oh, it's great, man. It's fantastic. Listen, I good luck." And he said, "I want you to meet me for dinner in Brooklyn." So I went to dinner. I talked with him, and we talked about the script. I still don't know what's happening, but I'm like, yeah, I'm going along with it. Yeah, Spike, this is great. Eddie, you know, these characters are great. And then he asked me, what do you think about this character, Eddie? Fantastic. I really love the way that he, you know, his arc and everything. I want you to play Eddie. So I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
That's what this is. That's what's going down right now.
But I just didn't, you know, I didn't want to assume anything. So I'm inside jumping up and down like a little schoolboy, like, I'm trying to be cool. I said, yeah, thanks, man. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm honored by this. But inside, I'm like flipping, you know. But we get over there to Thailand. He had just won the Oscar, so he was in a good mood. And
right.
But what I loved about, I didn't know, you know, his process. I had that little bit of experience on She's Gotta Have It, but it wasn't that significant because I only had, you know, like a day to be on that. But he knows what he wants, when he wants it, and how he wants it. So you trust that. But within that, he gives you the freedom to be you. Now, you say these lines, and you do it to the best of your ability. He'll sometimes go, that didn't work. Change this line. Change that word. Or he'll say, what would Eddie say in this moment? And he gave us this freedom within the confines of what he wanted. He gave us this freedom, and it felt so good as an actor to do that. Because, you know, he's an actor, you know. He's a writer. He's a director. He's a cinematographer. Like, he has all of that. So I felt really, really comforted, and I felt I could trust him. And all of us together, like the dynamic that you saw on the film, that was kind of our dynamic off state. So he really knows how to cast a film too. You know, it was great. And I'm glad I got to work with people that I've admired for years and that I've known for a long time. And this new guy, for me, he was new. But Jonathan Majors, the one that plays the son to Delroy.
Oh, Jonathan Majors is a beast. I've seen him in 2 or 3 other films. He was in The Last Black Man in San Francisco, chewing up the scenery. And he was in some movie, White Boy Rick, with Matthew McConaughey. Again, chewing up the scenery. That boy, you right about Jonathan. Jonathan's the next big thing.
Just like 3 years ago, just graduated from Yale, and he's done about 16 things, and he's not stopped yet. And I'm so proud to know him. And I'm like, yo, brah, you know, if you need a dad or something.
Not if you need a dad.
Get your brother. Uncle, you know, just let me be an extra in your movie. Yeah.
I can't stand you. I want to ask you one question about Eddie. Eddie seems to be this character who he's trying to front in front of his boys. You know, he's got this car dealership. You know, he puts his car down. He's like, I got everybody's room. And then they get out in the jungle and everybody's letting their drawers down. And you know what I mean? Like, you in the jungle, like ain't nobody out there, can't nobody tape you, ain't nothing happening. And then he finally admits, you know, because they were like, yeah, you know, Eddie, we know this ain't nothing for you because, you know, you rich, you got this, you got that. And you were like, yo, I'm broke. And they were like, Why do you think, and that's something that is prevalent within the Black culture. We front with each other and we try to make it appear as though, not all of us, but in certain situations, we will have other people thinking that we are balling and we're not. Why do you think we as Black people, and particularly us as human beings, why do folk feel the need to put on airs and just, you know, and not be their authentic self in those moments?
Listen, there's so many layers to that question because, you know, I feel like success within the culture makes you better, makes you feel better about yourself, makes you, you know, I've seen it within my family that, you know, there was significant lies that happened just because they wanted to look better than they were. And I just remember growing up in the South, and my mom would always say, I don't understand why folks will have this beautiful car, but yet they live in a shack. And why would this beautiful car be in this shack? I just don't get it. Wouldn't you want to put more into your house and buy an economy car? So it's people, and it's not just to the Black culture, but we're just, that's our experience. But Wow, this is so many layers to this because I want to go in many different directions. But I will say this: I was just talking to someone recently about when I was growing up. I always thought that being closer to white would made you better. It took me a long time to accept my darkness as a black man, and that dynamic within our community.
Absolutely.
Me until I was in college to actually accept the fact that being dark was just as good as anybody else. I wanted to be a light skinned brother because most of the light skinned brothers that I knew were getting most of the attention, the girls and the advantages, and so at least that's what I thought. But then things changed in college, and I saw a significant difference. But it was always, it's always coming into your own and trying to be the best in front of someone, and sometimes people lie about that.
Yeah, it is. It's a really interesting situation with that, but I'm glad that you were open enough to answer that question, because it's like a layered question, and it's like an onion. There's very numerous layers to peel when it comes to that, and there's like no right or wrong answer with it. It just is what it is. But since your character was living in that lane, I just wanted to like throw that out there. Since we had talked about everything else within the confines of the picture, I want to throw that out there.
I think sorry to interrupt you, but I think that was the beauty of what Spike wrote, and finding out, because when he goes into the flashbacks, he's really looking at Norman, and he's really looking at him for guidance and the history that he's talking about, and all of that comes back to him, because he really wants to give back to Black Lives Matter, back to the people, but he found out that success wasn't what it was built up to be, so.
Well, baby, I have enjoyed talking to you so much, and I did find out for sure, thanks to your lovely, lovely publicist Giselle, that this was the first time the Tonys ever got canceled in history. It was the first time that the ceremony had ever been canceled. But having said that, I'm so proud of you, Norm. I remember meeting you walking down the street, I think, in Manhattan, on like 9th Avenue or 8th Avenue or something. And you didn't know this, but we used to joke in the theater community, we would call you like the Black Tony Curtis. To us, that's what you look like. But I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy that you have been able to maneuver in all these different lanes, being on Scandal, being on Broadway, doing these films, doing recordings, being part of BIV, Broadway Inspirational Voices. I mean, you're really having a wonderful ride, and I really hope and pray that it continues for quite some time.
Well, I'm going to take that blessing and just, I'm so grateful for all of those things that have happened to me, but I have to turn it back on you, because we've been there. We've been through the trenches. We used to audition together, and, we got a lot of friends that just kind of hung together and stuff. And I love seeing your rise. I mean, you have commercials and being in movies and being on television and also now being a journalist. I mean, come on. You are multifaceted, and you're still beautiful, even though, look at here. Black don't crack. Black don't crack. Black don't crack. I'm just saying that.
Aw, thank you, Norm. I appreciate you. I love you so much. Thank you.
200 years old, but she looks like she's 20.
You know what? I can't stand you. I'm going to stop the recording. You're so stupid. To keep up with the Curvy Critic, like our page here, click that subscribe button, and click that bell for notifications. Love, peace, and hair grease, y'all.